He sat in the parking lot for 4 minutes doing math on whether he could afford to valet his own car. Not a rental, his car. The leased German sedan with the payment he's been carrying for 3 years. $12 plus the tip he'd feel obligated to add. And he ran the number twice before deciding he could absorb it. Then he sat there another minute anyway, because deciding hadn't actually made him feel any better. Inside, 200 people are drinking bad wine under bad lighting at a 10-year reunion. He's about to walk in wearing a watch that cost more than most of them pay in rent, tell a genuinely good story about the kitchen he just renovated, and hold the room while he does it. He earns $98,000 a year. He has $600 in savings and $11,000 in credit card debt he has not mentioned to anyone. The woman who parked 3 rows over drove an 11-year-old car with 190,000 miles on it. No watch, no renovation story. She earns $56,000. She has 14 months of expenses sitting in cash, invests 22% of every paycheck, and could stop working tomorrow for more than a year without changing one thing about how she lives. Same degree, same graduating year. Their first jobs paid within $1,000 of each other. 10 years later, the one earning nearly twice as much is the one who cannot survive a broken transmission. 3 things before we go further. The first is that she was not always the second person in this story. 10 years ago, she was him. Worse than him. We'll get to what broke. The second is that of the 10 rules I'm about to give you, she says one did more than the other 9 put together. I'll tell you which when we reach it, and the third is that in 10 years, both of them get another invitation to another reunion. Only one will have a choice about whether to open it. Because this isn't a story about income. It's a story about what happens to money between your paycheck and your actual life, and how much of it gets absorbed by things you stopped noticing years ago. He isn't reckless. He doesn't gamble. He has no expensive secret. He made 100 reasonable decisions over 10 years, each one defensible on its own, and together they built a life that requires every dollar he earns just to stay upright. She figured out something most people never figure out at all. Owning less is not the same as living with less. It's living on purpose. And living on purpose creates a gap between what you earn and what you spend. And that gap is the only thing that has ever made anyone financially stable. Here are the 10 rules that produce it, starting with the idea that makes all 10 make sense. Everything you own costs money twice. The first cost is obvious. It's the price on the receipt. That's the cost everybody sees. The second cost is the one nobody calculates, and it's frequently larger. It has 4 parts: space, upkeep, attention, and opportunity. Space first. A pool table is 40 square feet. One you can actually play on, with room to draw a cue back, needs closer to 180. In most cities, housing runs $30 to $50 per square foot per year. That's $5,400 to $9,000 annually in implicit rent for a table used about 6 times. You didn't buy a pool table. You rented a room for it, and you're still paying. Then upkeep. That RV alongside the house needs registration, insurance, winterization, tires, roof resealing, and a storage fee if the city won't let you keep it in the driveway. Annual RV ownership runs around 10% of purchase price. A $60,000 RV costs roughly $6,000 a year before you drive it a single mile. Then attention. Every item you own takes a permanent slice of your mental bandwidth. It has to be cleaned, stored, insured, repaired, worried about, and eventually disposed of. Researchers have found that visual clutter measurably raises cortisol and reduces the brain's capacity to focus. Your possessions are taxing you in a currency you never agreed to pay. And opportunity. Every dollar sitting inside an object is a dollar not compounding somewhere else. That $14,000 hot tub, plus the deck to hold it and the landscaping to make it look right, could have been $14,000 in index funds. At historical averages, that's $45,000 or more over 15 years. You didn't buy a hot tub. You bought a hot tub instead of $45,000. The purchase price was the entry fee. The subscription runs as long as the object stays in your life. Rule 1. Calculate cost per use before you buy anything. Estimate honestly how many times you'll use the thing, not how many times you imagine using it. Divide the price by that number. A $180 dress worn once to a wedding costs $180 per wear. A $350 coat worn 300 times over 4 winters costs about $1.17. The expensive coat is dramatically cheaper in every sense that matters. This kills most impulse purchases on the spot. That $250 pasta machine used at Thanksgiving and abandoned by February costs $125 per use. That is an absurd price for noodles, but it also identifies what's worth buying. A $1,200 desk chair you sit in 8 hours a day for 8 years costs 60 cents a day for the thing supporting your spine during most of your waking life. A $900 commuter bike ridden 4 days a week for 6 years costs 72 cents a ride and replaces a transit pass costing 4 times that. The math cuts straight through marketing, emotion, and social pressure. Now, the thing I promised you. 10 years ago, the woman with the 11-year-old car was $23,000 in debt. Not student loans, consumer debt. A car she financed at 26 because everyone around her was upgrading. 4 credit cards, 3 near the limit, and a storage unit in a town she'd already moved away from, $140 a month, holding furniture she could no longer picture. She found out the way most people find out. Her transmission went. The repair was $2,400. She did not have $2,400, and there was no card left with the room on it. She sat in that waiting room and understood something it took her another decade to fully act on. She owned a great deal and possessed almost nothing. Every object she'd ever bought had quietly turned itself into a bill. The storage unit was the part that broke her. 18 months, $2,520 paid. To hold things she could not picture. She had been renting a room for objects she couldn't remember. That was the day the counting started. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to what you already own. Walk through your home and ask one question of each object. If this vanished overnight, would I spend real money to replace it? Be honest, would you replace the guitar in the corner you haven't tuned since the pandemic? Would you go out and buy the exercise bike currently functioning as the world's most expensive coat rack? For most of what you own, the answer is no. It exists through inertia, not intention. An impulse buy, a gift you felt obligated to keep, or a relic of a version of yourself you moved past years ago. Sell what has resale value, donate what someone can use, discard the rest. It's uncomfortable for about a week and then it's enormously freeing. Rooms feel bigger. Decisions get faster. You know where everything is because everything left has a reason to be there. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. There's a pattern I see constantly in people who earn well and own nothing. They replace functional things because they've grown tired of looking at them, or because a newer version exists. The laptop runs fine, but the new one has a better screen. The car starts every morning without complaint, but this year's version has a redesigned grille. These feel like improvements. They're wealth destruction wearing the costume of progress. The hard line is simple. Never replace something that still works. A phone that makes calls and runs the apps you use does not require replacement because a newer phone was announced. The average American replaces a phone every 2 to 3 years, usually while the old one works perfectly. Across 30 years, that's 12 handsets instead of 6. Call it $6,000 for nothing. Then extend the same logic to laptops, televisions, and furniture. Then extend it to cars, where a 4-year upgrade cycle instead of a 10-year one runs into tens of thousands across a working life, all by itself. So define functional precisely and refuse to negotiate with yourself about it. Boredom is not failure. Wanting novelty is not failure. The existence of something newer is not failure. Actual breakdown is failure. Everything else is an advertisement convincing you that you have a problem. Rule 4. Build friction into spending and remove it from saving. Human behavior takes the path of least resistance every time. If spending is frictionless and saving takes effort, you will spend. So make spending hard. Delete saved card numbers. Impose a 24-hour wait on anything non-essential. Remove shopping apps from your phone. Don't enter a store without a specific item you came for, and make saving automatic. Transfers that fire on payday before you've seen the money. A small operating balance in checking. Investment contributions treated as a fixed bill, not whatever's left over. This matters far more than discipline. Willpower drains over the course of a day. Environment doesn't. Someone relying on self-control eventually fails on a night when they are tired or celebrating. Someone who deleted the apps simply cannot make that purchase in that moment. The 24-hour rule does more work than any budget you'll ever write because most wanting evaporates within a day if you don't act on it. Now stop, because I need to break the pattern. 4 rules in, you might assume the rest are more of the same. They're not. And the rules were never the point anyway. The rules are a delivery system. The mechanism is one number, the gap. What you earn minus what you spend. Every rule on this list exists to widen it, and nothing else about your financial life comes close to mattering as much. Not your salary, not your returns, which is why the man in the parking lot is losing. He doesn't have a small gap. He has a negative one. 10 years of raises went entirely into the cost of the life those raises paid for. And I should tell you why I'm not neutral about this. I've read a lot of versions of the first-person story, not the dramatic ones, the ordinary ones. People earning well, owning plenty, 2 months from disaster the entire time, and completely unable to explain why, because on paper nothing was wrong. Almost none of them were ever told the second cost existed. They weren't careless. They were uninformed systematically by every message they'd received about what earning more is supposed to buy you. The 2 people in that parking lot are built out of those stories, not one person each. Dozens compressed into 2, with the details changed. I did that because the specific numbers matter far less than the fact that they repeat, almost identically, across incomes that have nothing else in common. That's the whole reason this list exists. So the 6 rules left are the ones that widen the gap fastest. And Rule 9 is the one she says did more than the other 9 combined. Rule 5. Count what you own on a schedule. This sounds obsessive right up until you try it. Counting creates awareness, and awareness stops accumulation before it starts. Pick a category, count it, write the number down. How many pairs of shoes do you own? Most people guess low and find they have 3 times their estimate. How many charging cables? How many books you will never open again? The count changes behavior by itself. Once you know you own 41 pairs of shoes, buying another feels different. You're not buying shoes. You're taking the collection to 42. So set ceilings, 30 garments, 15 books. A one-in, one-out policy where anything new requires something old to leave. Without a limit, possessions expand to fill whatever space is available. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. Most purchases follow the same arc. Intense use for a few weeks, then decline, then a long quiet decade in a closet. So test the arc before committing to it. Curious about mountain biking? Rent for the first 4 weekends. Thinking about pottery? Use a studio's wheel before buying one. This does 2 things. It reveals whether the enthusiasm is real, and most new interests fade after the initial exploration. And it tells you exactly what to buy, because first-time skiers almost always buy the wrong gear or too much of it. You buy the right thing once instead of the wrong thing 3 times. Garages and storage units are full of the residue of abandoned ambition. Ski equipment from the winter they were going to become skiers. Amplifiers from a band that played 2 shows. She was paying $140 a month to warehouse exactly that. So is someone on your street right now. Rule 7. Understand the multiplier effect. Every possession connects to other possessions. An RV needs a hitch, a vehicle capable of pulling it, storage, insurance, leveling blocks, a generator, and an entire category of supplies that exists only because you own an RV. That's the multiplier. Major purchases don't stay singular. They open ecosystems. A classic car needs a second insurance policy, climate-controlled storage, a specialist mechanic who charges accordingly, and parts that arrive from 3 states away. So price the whole ecosystem before the first purchase. A $5,000 decision is frequently a $13,000 decision once the supporting cast is included. And it runs in reverse, which is the good news. Selling the RV ends the storage fee, the insurance, the registration, the winterizing, and the maintenance all at once. Rule 8. Define enough before your income grows. Here's the trap that catches high earners specifically. They never define what enough looks like, so they keep buying without arriving anywhere. Income rises, lifestyle rises. The new lifestyle becomes baseline within 4 months. Progress now requires another raise. Repeat indefinitely. This is why people earning $280,000 report the same financial stress as people earning $75,000. Expectations expanded in lockstep with income, so the gap never opened. So set the target before you can afford to miss it. Decide in advance what house is sufficient and what car meets the actual need. That might mean deciding a $300,000 home is enough even when you eventually qualify for $550,000. It might mean deciding a $25,000 car is enough while colleagues finance $65,000 ones. Defining enough creates a finish line. Someone who defines it at $55,000 of spending and then grows into a $140,000 income builds wealth at a rate that looks impossible from outside. That $85,000 gap goes straight to independence every year automatically. Someone earning the identical $140,000 while quietly revising enough upward saves close to nothing and cannot explain why. Rule 9. Measure wealth in options, not objects. This is the one. The rule, she says, did more than the other 9 put together. And the reason is that it changes what you're trying to win. The conventional scoreboard counts what you have. The house, the car, the visible evidence of doing well. She threw it out and started counting what she could choose. Can you walk away from a job that's damaging your health? Can you take 6 months off when a parent gets sick? Can you turn down work that pays well and cost you something you're not willing to give? Those are the only holdings that matter, and they belong exclusively to people who've built real distance between what they earn and what they spend. Someone earning $180,000 and spending $174,000 has almost no options. They're chained to that income. Someone earning $75,000 and spending $42,000 can absorb a layoff, take a risk, or decide based on what they actually want. So every purchase reframes. You're not trading money for an object. You're trading flexibility for an object. Sometimes that's worth it. Usually it isn't. Rule 10. Declutter on a cycle, not in a purge. Most people do one enormous weekend purge, feel fantastic for a month, and gradually rebuild to exactly where they started. The purge gets photographed. The slow refill happens invisibly. Work on a cycle instead. A weekly glance at what came into the house. A monthly pass through one category. A quarterly look at the trend line. Removing 3 items a week is effortless. Removing 300 once a year is daunting, which is exactly why it keeps getting postponed until a move forces it. Here's how to start without reorganizing your entire life. This week, run the replacement test. Find 10 things you wouldn't buy again if they disappeared tonight. Remove them. This month, run the 24-hour rule on every non-essential purchase. Keep a list of what you wanted and whether you still wanted it a day later. The number is usually humbling. This quarter, count 3 categories that accumulate. Clothing, kitchen equipment, entertainment. Set a ceiling on each based on what you demonstrably use. This year, define enough. What home is sufficient? What car is adequate? Write the answers down as real sentences with real numbers and read them back whenever you're tempted to revise them upward. And here's the part nobody mentions. It runs in both directions. Owning less produces money, but having money also makes owning less feel natural rather than restrictive. When savings are solid, the pull to accumulate weakens on its own. The needs driving most consumption, security, and status start getting met by the balance sheet instead of by objects. People caught in consumption cycles usually can't explain why they buy so much. The honest answer is that spending temporarily patches the anxiety that fragility creates. Fix the fragility and the compulsion tends to dissolve without a fight. That's the virtuous cycle. Spending less builds savings. Savings builds security. Security reduces the need to spend. Every turn strengthens the next. The opposite cycle is equally self-reinforcing and far more common. Spending everything produces insecurity. Insecurity drives spending as relief. It continues until an external shock forces the issue. A layoff, a diagnosis, a transmission. Which cycle you're in determines your trajectory far more than your income ever will. Which brings us back to the parking lot. 10 years ago, she was the one sitting in the car doing math she didn't want to do. She didn't get out of it on income. Her salary today is barely higher than it was then. She got out on clarity. She decided what enough looked like, wrote it down, and then declined 10,000 times over 10 years to move the line. He never questioned the assumption underneath everything, that more is progress, that upgrading is the same as advancing, that the visible life and the actual life are the same life. They'll both get that next invitation in 10 years. She'll open it whenever she feels like it. He'll open it on a Tuesday and sit with it and do the math. Both trajectories are available to you right now, regardless of what you currently earn. The only question is whether you want to own your possessions or whether you're comfortable with your possessions owning you. The math favors the first option. So does everything that happens after. And in the next video, I want to talk about the watch. He didn't buy it to tell the time. He bought it so that a room full of people who hadn't seen him in 10 years would reach a specific conclusion about him in the first 4 seconds. It worked. Every single person in that room believed it. She parked an 11-year-old car 3 rows over and let them reach the opposite conclusion, and she was right to let them. Next time, why looking poor is one of the most underrated financial strategies there is. What it actually buys you. What it costs you socially, because it does cost you. And the exact point where it stops protecting you and starts working against you. And do not forget to subscribe for more videos.